Hello, YouTube. What is that? Twitch? Discord? Oh, yes, Discord voice. Um, Facebook and yeah, YouTube. Okay. Welcome to Evidence-Based Audio Engineering, number 153. Sheesh. Okay, so that's pretty far. This one is the epistemology. No, this. Sorry. Let me start this over. This is the perils of doing this stuff live. Welcome to Evidence-Based Audio Engineering number 153, and this is the Postmodernism, It Burns. So, first I want to show you something. People are discussing the Helix. They already made a 3.3, like a future firmware thread. And, I think that the 3.15 or whatever didn't come out yet. We're still waiting on that one. But somebody at this Fancy Salmon had mentioned, hey, there's some GUI stuff, graphical user interface, the knobs and sliders and stuff on your plugin. For instance, on Total Mix here, like these faders and the pan controls and meters and everything. The parts you look at and interact with, basically. He was saying, some of the stuff on the Helix should be fixed. And I'm super sensitive. I always talk about quality of life issues and ergonomics and stuff. And so I really always keep an eye on stuff like this. And I remember we talked about on this show, right? Sent something to Positive Grid about bias, about, basic quality of life stuff, such as being able to see values at a glance, which, can interfere with the photorealism. But I think people could turn it on or off as an option. But that's a really important one, being able to know what value it is without having to touch it. Or at least if you could mouse over it or touch it without it changing anything and knowing the value, for instance. Things like some way to return to unity gain or return to preset default. Like in a lot of plugins, double clicking or whatever. Fine tuning, direct entry. Some things don't even have direct entry. And I know it sounds like I'm picking on Positive Grid here, but I mean, this is a lot of these things, especially if you were really wanting to be on the iPhone or the iPad. That's more, I can see that's I don't know how not to compromise there. I'm sure somebody's going to figure it out, but because, you don't have a right, Apple in general is so bad about the right click thing, but you don't have a way to push the mouse cursor over without clicking on it, or maybe you do in the future, but I don't know. Well, somebody will figure it out. Maybe it's like pressure sensitive screen or whatever. But anyway, he said he was talking about the UI stuff, and somebody else asked, such as, genuine question because I'm genuinely interested. I can certainly think of a few things that I would personally change, but there's some hyperbole, but you ever want to see my world? This is something I'm super sensitive to. So anytime end users talk about GUIs and user interface, and I know we got in a big old argument about user experience, user interface, whatever. I don't care what you call it. It's interacting with the plugin, whatever. I'm really interested. So he said, really, really annoying stuff that should have been improved yesterday. And this is kind of the things that you see people kind of, one of the categories that they make the really crazy stuff. Like, you're nuts that this product is this broken, and, of course, given the title of this thing about the postmodernism, I don't want to make it so wishy-washy that I'm not on one side or another. But, you could say that maybe it works well for this one or it doesn't work well for that one. But to some people, those features are just completely broken. And to other people, it doesn't really matter. But it's this category, the super hyperbole category of like, this thing is nuts. Like, it doesn't have a polarity switch or something, when it actually says phase on it, but it can't flip the polarity. I don't know. But so it's probably too specific to really say, but in general, I'll just read some of these. Stereo IR and stereo amp blocks. Just makes no sense that they're not there. Stereo amp blocks would make reamping double track guitars way easier. Stereo IR configuration for those who use it permanently eats up one parallel path for absolutely no good reason and requires extra DSP Tetris time if you want to juggle things around. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is actually a UI thing. It might be that there's actually would have to double the DSP here or something, but this is one of those things, like, again, where you have a fixed screen and you have a line going across and you only have so much space. You may not really be able to show a stereo path, but just the way he's talking, one of the ways I've seen people handle things like this, and how you put more things on the screen, just change the color of it, or like it's dashed or something. It's pretty cool how people figure these things out. Okay, so this kind of applies to kind of anything. You should not lose block settings when changing between mono and stereo blocks. There's nothing worse than tweaking an EQ block and realizing you put a mono one when you needed a stereo one. And he didn't finish it, but I guess in this case, if you switched it to become a stereo one of the same EQ, it flips it back to the preset default or whatever for the plugin, the block or whatever. This is the Helix is like a multi effects thing, so you could think of it as a bunch of plugins chained together. But that is, you guys all know, if you don't save something or whatever, just the absolute horrific pain of what you lost there. Like, this is one of those things where you should, we always complain, are you sure you want to switch presets? Are you sure you want to change blocks? And you always click right through. Yes, stop asking me, stop it. But this is one of those ones where you kind of appreciate a little warning, or, what else could you do? Or just keep it there. Don't drop them when it changes. That should probably be the default. Of course, see, and again, I'm trying not to be all Mr. Postmodernist here, but, yeah, man, it's funny how you want to be pretty sure of something and pretty firm about where you stand on one side or the other of an issue, but I can't really think of a reason that you would not want it to hold those settings when you change from mono to stereo. This is one of those ones where, it's not a false dichotomy, or it's not a dichotomy, or it's not a spectrum. I think this one is solidly pretty much, I don't want that to change. So let's see. He also says, you also shouldn't lose block settings when trying different models within that block. Interesting. For example, if you choose a different amp and then choose the one that was there before, you should get the settings back that were there, not the user factory default. And it should be the case for any and all changes in that same block. This makes simple A/B comparisons way harder than they should be. Oh, yeah, that's true. I wonder, there are some differences between Helix native and the Helix itself. Not too terribly many, actually, but I wonder if this is one of those things where you really could do an A/B on the plugin, or even on the Helix editor, HX editor or whatever. Maybe not. I'm not sure how that one works, but definitely on the plugin. Let's see. Foot switch assignments for value changes that should default to the parameter's current value. Let me unpack this. Suppose you want to assign a foot switch to change the gain in the amp block. Its current value is 5. Unfortunately, the foot switch assignment defaults to 0.0 and 10.0, min-max values. So you have to manually set it to min to 5 and max the value of choice. It makes way more sense for it to default to 5 and 5 minus the current value of the parameter. Less work for the end user. See, this is where these guys, this is one of those GUI choices where people will just sit there and argue, because this is it's really hard to say which is the right way to go, if there is a right way. And then, he gives some potential feature improvement. Auto saving settings when switching between presets. I swear that it already does that. At the very least, have the option of persistence of snapshots and foot switch settings, which can be when changing between presets. That's interesting. Better IR browser, yeah. Fuzzy search tags, even folders. Mega block that can fit any category. Yeah, so I always like to watch what the end users are saying. But one of these things somebody answered, Phil actually again. Just touch both of them at the same time. A message confirming that you want to swap the foot switch assignments will pop up on the screen. Hit OK. So, the guy who started the thing, who was complaining about one of the features, found out from another user that it actually does work the way he would like it to work. You just have to do it a certain way. And this is common. This is why I like forums. I'm sad that we don't have the kind of forums we used to have where people are always talking to each other, because this is how the users really help people get the most out of their stuff. You can write all the manuals in the world, but they can't do anything compared to what your end users will do when they explain it to somebody else. I mean, seriously, I know people who make really good manuals and stuff, but having a community that does that stuff is just awesome. And then the other thing that tells me is that it was maybe hard for him to find that information. He may have searched it before and not been able to find it. And I had a few things like that on the Helix. And in fact, I had one thing, we talked about that before, actually, that was actually not true the way it was written in all the manuals and descriptions, really. And I had to confirm that with the with some videos with the developers of the Helix. So yeah, it's a two-way street, and it's important to have a community. Okay, and so I'm sure you guys get this kind of email. This is from Hi. Hey there, I'm Calvin Alex. I would like to know if you are available for a studio recording session service, and how much do you offer an hour and per day session, and do you accept credit cards or check? So if I send this guy back, I'm going to get the thing that he's going to send me a check through a courier or something, and it's going to have an extra $1,500. Cash it and then split the difference and send him back the $750, and then later on we'll find out that the check bounced and all that stuff. Basically, it's like a Nigerian scam or 411 scam or advanced fee scam, whatever you call it. It's scary. I wonder how many of you guys still get these. For the music classes, we always get the one where they says that they're going to drop off their kids with their personal chauffeur, and he's going to bring you a check, and and they just write it in the weirdest ways, like you're going to warehouse the kids or something. It's just so screwy. It's crazy to me that people are still doing this, but I suppose it must be pretty easy through software to just send out spam emails like mad to try and fish for this kind of stuff, right? Or otherwise, I guess it doesn't hurt to try if you're a crook, man. But it just kills me that these things are still around. Okay, we had a show on Friday, and we're always trying to get the stage volume down. So I always tell people, your amp on stage is for you. It's not for the audience. Point it at your face so you can hear it. I'm going to take an output of the amp. I don't want to mic up an amp, especially outside in tiny little contained space and stuff. It's outside, but the drums are funneling right into the back of the amps and stuff where the mics would be. They're pretty close to it. So, and I would rather use an Impulse or something else, but it's going into XR18, and I kind of made a EQ preset that kind of sort of, come on, get out of here. It kind of simulates a guitar amp or cabinet. And then, some people bring amps that have legit speaker emulators. The Fender ones is, I had a lot of problems with the Fender Mustang series, but that speaker simulator is not one of them. That's pretty cool, actually. And sometimes, guitar players are really finicky and crazy. So if you want to use a DI with them or something, they just freak out. Even if it's like from an effects send or a line out or whatever. Some of these things don't have their line outs and stuff. One of the guys brought this thing, the DSM Humboldt Electronic Simplifier 0-watt stereo amplifier. And it seems to be some sort of DI. How do they describe it? Analog guitar preamplifier with 3 amp voicings, power amp sim, stereo cab sim, stereo balanced XLR outputs, 1/8" aux input, 1/8" headphone output. And I swear it also has, out left and through and out right or some mono. It has some 1/4" outs, XLR outs, preamp sends and returns. Yeah, I'm gonna look at the back. Yeah, see, it has a bunch of connectors and stuff. But the cool thing was, this is like a DI, but it also has like amplifier sounds or whatever. It's like a power amp emulator and a speaker emulator. And it has some EQ, gain, volume, pretty much what you'd probably want in some kind of device like this. It's $300, which seems insane to me, but guitar players pay crazy money for all these pedal thingies, and having this really just let me plug it right into the board, and it sounded great. It sounded awesome. So if you guys want to do that weird pedal crap and have all kinds of pedals all over the place, throw one of these things in here. I also like that more IR pedal or whatever. I'd be fine with that. But if you want this thing seems like it does other stuff too. I kind of almost would use it for a recording thing. If I'd just rather use the Helix though. Like it nowadays. not the Helix hardware, but the Helix native plugin. Really like it. Okay, but this was a really cool product, and I know it's very expensive for what it is for kind of a DI, or for what we would use it for is just a DI, but for somebody's tone shaping, I'm sure this is great. I mean, you pay all kinds of money for some other dumb thing. And yeah, here's the spammers. What are you guys on YouTube? What are you even typing on me? Okay. And the other thing is, like I said, we want to keep the stage volume down. And one of the big problems there, besides the guitar amp volume, is cymbals. The shell drums really aren't that big of a problem. I thought they would be, but they're really not. But shell drums, I kind of do know how to get some less volume out of. But I remember seeing these things. This is just an example one. This is the Zildjian L80 series LV468 low volume cymbal box pack. And it's like these cymbals that they are just piles of holes in them, and when you hit them, they sound like cymbals, but they're not really loud. They're really quiet. And let me see if I can play this video here, and somebody try and DMCA me or something stupid. Let's see this is going through.
Hi, I'm Andy Tamulanis here at Zildjian, and we're here to talk about Cymbal 101. This is the thick
Where's the
accents.
Oh, what is this crap? I want to see the. All right. Well, oh yeah, here we go. Well, here's the low volume cymbals. See, like a dB meter going to like 97 dB. Yeah, see, the low volume ones they sound like cymbals, man. Hit the cymbal, hit the crash. Hit the crash, come on, hit the crash. Yeah, so would I have to mic them? So are any of you guys using these things out there live? Because I don't know if that's just too quiet or what, but I would sure love to get that volume down. I know we could do this in our practice rooms, but or not our practice rooms, but our teaching rooms. That would be actually kind of a cool thing. But I know it's a part of the balance of the drum kit that people are used to for overheads, but I don't think that's so important live. Well, we'll see. But I really would like to hear some feedback. Maybe we'll get some for the school, and we'll give it a test live. Yeah, we had to. Last week I had to cut some way too loud people, and I'm trying to get the volumes down still, and it's always a tricky thing, you got short sets, but the drummer wants to change snares, move, take off a tom, all this stuff. Like, when you're in the big leagues, you have a custom drum set. When you're otherwise you're slowing down the whole show. One of these days we got to get Tom Gibbons or somebody back on here and talk about getting the flow of the stage going well. We always end up behind schedule, but I'm really proud of our kids, especially crazy. Sam Seibert stepped up, Lenore the Shredder, of course, since forever, and Kavika Stone, and he's gimping around and he's doing it. Okay, anyways, last bit here. Last week we were talking about this whole thing. When you're talking like postmodernism, we were talking about this earlier, right? To us, I don't want to say normal people. I don't want to make it an appeal to popularity or a bandwagon or whatever. But if you flip a coin, for the most intents and purposes, it's going to be heads or tails. Like if you're talking about a regular coin that you would flip. You see how many caveats I have to put on in this thing? Let's go regular coin. We're on Earth and there's gravity and the surface is sort of flat. You know what I mean? When we're flipping a coin, let's just say under ideal coin flipping conditions, we're talking about a choice between two things, heads or tails. Sure, it could land on the edge once in a while. But really, we're talking about two states. It's just crazy. Like the book 1984 really described a situation where you're limiting the language, so you couldn't even think about not following the party line because you wouldn't have the words to describe it eventually. A postmodernist would say, and I know, don't blame me, I'm not really into philosophy, but the type that we're talking about would say, it's not really heads or tails. That's too limited of thinking, How do you know it's heads or tails? It's all kinds of things. It's kind of the false spectrum fallacy, but it's just a half step away from hard solipsism. And when nobody can agree about the nature of reality basic stuff, or the definitions of words, or if somebody's changing the definition of a word while between sentences or something, you can't really communicate. You can't really decide things. So to me, that coin flip is a coin flip. I understand that there's shades of gray. There often is a spectrum, and it is possible that the coin could land on its side. Really unlikely, but it's a possibility, and maybe we could discuss that contingency or whatever. But for the most part, when we're talking about those two things. And I know there's all kinds of things in debates all the time about whether or not things are dichotomies or spectrums. But there are real spectrums, but that's not these things. This is just gobbledygook. So anyway, I was responding to a post about, and whoever this is, ban them from my channel. I don't know what the hell are you posting? Whatever that is, no, don't anybody click that thing. Anyhow, this was the logic behind tube versus regular mic sound. Like, all these magic claims that they make about tube mics that can't be about other mics or whatever. Somebody came in and we read this the other week. Said, I haven't read the whole thread and I don't want to ridicule anyone. It just often seems the case that people who are really good at science understand the limitations of science better than people who know less about it. Science as religion and dogma is much more common among non-scientific people than among leading scientists. You should look at the philosophical discussion called science criticism. Start with Popper, for example. Look at the pioneers in quantum physics and see how critical they were of science, etc. I've studied these topics for many years. Sooner than later, you get into severe epistemology land. How can you prove that there is an outside world? In hard solipsism. The point is that you can only measure what you have first encountered without measurement. A measurement is a decision about what to measure and what kind of measurement should be applied. A measurement is a limiting decision. It blanks out things. It is an approach. There is no measurement that falls from the sky given by the gods. A measurement often tells you more about the limitations of the mindset of the approach than about the fact that it tries to capture. Even that fact is the result of a choice that blanks out most of what is given. A measurement also always is a translation. It is not the given fact. It is not as close to the facts as you might think and hope it is. Whatever the facts might be, make some music and be happy. And part of that argument, of course, I hope you saw it. I might be wrong here, but I said, which of course the science-minded among us would see as a God of the gaps argument. My thing here is, this is the God. Like, you're trying to find something that we haven't measured. Fine. But the thing is, when these things measure the same, they sound the same. When we do, like if you're doing a null test or whatever, maybe, everybody always says there's something that could get through the null test. That may not be a God of the gaps. I mean, there often is like some kind of noise or dither noise or whatever. Maybe might make a subjective difference or whatever. But if double blinded, you can't tell the difference anyways, we have those measurements. So when we're talking about noise, when we're talking about bandwidth, when we're talking about frequency response and distortion, let's start there. We have those already. We see that if they're different, they sound different. And if they're the same, they sound the same. But this guy's like, oh, well, you have to look outside the limitations of science. But what limitation are you talking about in this case? In this case, we see that two things look the same and they sound the same. And then when the two things look different, they sound different. It's like both the objective and subjective are getting the same answer here, I don't know why you would have to look outside of that. What difference does it make if the pioneers in quantum physics were critical of science? And were they? I don't think they were. I think we talked about this last time. I couldn't find any. Yeah, that's right. I couldn't find anything about them being critical of science. But he said, I like Reaper, which is cool. But I worry about this kind of stuff. This is what I think about. So much of lately, it's just been so much epistemology stuff, and I'm sorry for that. But this makes such a difference in our lives. Of course, it makes a difference in the Backstreet Boys reunion tour going on right now. That people can't. They don't know why they know what they know, or they don't have a good reason or a good way to find out whether or not what they believe is true, or they don't care if their beliefs are true. And that's causing some trouble for us right now, health-wise. Now this guy, Thomas Mulcahy, Father Mulcahy, he responds with, it is verging on the God of the gaps, yes, because of the mysticism, but it is also the proper scientific approach. Often science is characterized as all-knowing. It is precisely the opposite. Carl Sagan described science as a candle in the dark. I think he meant each theory brings us closer to knowing more, but also shows us that there is even more to know. That is genuine progress. All science really is methodological curiosity, like a child exploring but making a record of findings and reflecting on the questions to see if they are the right ones. Anything that presents itself as all-knowing, sure of itself, is merely arrogance, which is the worst form of stupidity. That comes from fear. It is insecurity. See all the anti-poke idiots? They're calling everybody else scared, but this is really what it is. They don't, a lot of them, they have no idea what they're talking about, and they're militantly ignorant. Like, I want to stay stupid as long as I can. They will angry at you if you even ask, hey, do you have any evidence? Not unlike these mic preamp weirdos. You just type evidence there. The guitar tone wood people, not any different. Go on here. Because it is afraid to look in the mirror and realize we are tiny nothings in an infinity of randomness. And as we can see from the cutting edge quantum physics, the true nature of reality is beyond our conception, primarily because it's the way our brains work, I think is what he's saying. That's cognitive bias, which is the main thing that people are misunderstanding in this thread and covering up with mysticism. Is that true? So, okay, first of all, yeah, any kind of mysticism, I want some evidence that even that phenomenon exists, but I don't know that it's a proper scientific approach. Like this, often science is characterized as all-knowing. By who? The only time I see people saying that kind of stuff is these anti-science people. I think science is the admission that we don't know jack, but we have a way to find out as much as we can, and we're working on it. And it's a thing that we're doing, not a thing that is or isn't. It's a verb. All science is methodological curiosity. I don't know. I don't know what difference this makes to the things that we do know, though. We do know that we have noise, distortion, frequency response, bandwidth. We have those things already. We can measure those. So how about we start there before we start ruminating on what in the world other kind of mystical spiritual things could be floating into these microphones. Where is it? Was there something else? I think that was about it. But it just kills me that. Oh yeah. So somebody was saying, as these guys are getting into all this like philosophy, and I'm trying to be. I'm hoping to see Steve McRae explain the modal ontological agreement, because I still say that sounds like complete nonsense. And I shared the same kind of feelings about philosophy as many other sciencey folks do. But it's only because we're tainted by this postmodern nonsense crap philosophy and this tweed jacket with the arm patch, elbow patch thingy on it philosophy. But knowing like this, your fallacious, your logic and stuff like that, that's often a function of philosophy. It's to me it's weird that it is the same thing. But so anyways, I'm trying to accept and learn more philosophy stuff lately, but I'm trying to be good here. And somebody asks, what is the philosophy anyway but a way to view the world that guides your actions? I think with the right worldview, an ordinary day can be something magnificent, and a challenge can be an opportunity to grow. I also personally think a positive outlook is more realistic, true to the situation than a very negative one. And it's a sort of negative views that can perpetuate negative experience for a person and any of the people around them. Anyway, he's saying, I think to relate it to this stuff, I'm saying how we choose our perspectives is rather critical action we must take. That does seem to have physical ramifications. But I was going to say, if it's two different things, it's still going to be different, philosophy or not, And so you got a Sabovic Addis something, I don't know. It says, philosophy is love for truth, not towards wisdom. Wisdom is Athena, not Sophia. I don't know that it's any of this stuff. I think philosophy is talking about talking or thinking about thinking half the time. But anyway, that I don't know why. I think this is what my point I wanted to really make is we have these things we can already measure. We can already tell if they're the same or different. If the things sound different but measure the same, that's when you go out looking for this new mystery parameter that you got to find a way to measure this something out there. Or if you have two things sound the same, even though they measure totally different in a way where they shouldn't sound the same, because there is ways to make things measure completely different and kind of sound the same. Then that's when you go to look for that phenomenon, not before. So when somebody says, oh, you can't prove that it's not true, you can't prove that homeopathy doesn't work, you can't prove that my chiro acupuncture quackerectomy didn't cure my deafness or whatever, it's the same thing as you telling them, hey, I got a fire breathing dragon in my garage, but you can't see him and he's weightless and substanceless, and so you just can't be asked to prove him a negative. If you're making a claim, you better bring the evidence. We have, if the things sound the same and measure the same, and you still want to say that something is different, you got to show us that difference. You got to show what that measurement is, and that it actually manifests in the real world in a way that, well, first of all, if it manifests in the real world at all, and if it does, if it manifests in a way that matters. Anyway, keep thinking. I hopefully will be a lot more awake next week, and hopefully have somebody on here, but I'll see you guys later.